Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Raji Rajagopalan, and I'm a VP of Product in the Microsoft Foundry team. And I'm super excited to be talking about building and shipping AI applications with local AI and Microsoft Foundry. It is all the way from cloud to edge. And we believe that future of AI is in your hands. This is a session about Foundry. But it is not a session about Foundry on the cloud. It is a session about Foundry on your phones, in your laptops, on your desktops, in containers on your on-prem servers. It is a session about Foundry that is outside of the public cloud, Foundry that is local. Because we believe that local AI is critical to democratizing AI, to making AI available to every single person on the planet. And we believe that because of 4 specific use cases. Use case number 1 is privacy and security. This is when you have super sensitive data. This could be your financial data, your healthcare data. You don't want the data to leave the user's device, to traverse to and from the internet, but you still want AI to operate on that data. Use case number 2 is latency. This is when you want instantaneous responses. You may be speaking into your device, and you want translation or transcription to happen instantaneously, to appear in real time. Use case number 3 is cost efficiency. A lot of our customers have talked to us about cost efficiency. They have many, many inferencing calls that are happening throughout the month, and they want to manage their costs. They want to optimize their costs by using a combination of cloud AI and local AI. Use case number 4 is low bandwidth, occasionally connected scenarios. Many of you may have traveled here on an airplane, and the airplane Wi-Fi can be pretty spotty at times, but you still want to be able to use AI even in that scenario. Or you could be like some of our customers with warehouses and distribution centers in remote corners of the world, and you still want AI on these devices. So these are the 4 use cases our customers have talked to us about, and this is why we're introducing Microsoft Foundry to span across cloud and edge. On the very left-hand side, you see Microsoft Foundry on the cloud. This is where the models and the services are executing on our cloud. But today, many of us have personal computing devices, our laptops, our desktops, our phones, and these devices are quite capable of running AI locally. And this is why we introduced Foundry Local at Build this year. And Foundry Local is available on Windows and Mac OS. And as of today, we're very, very excited to say it's available on mobile phones as well on Android. But many organizations have told us that they actually want local AI to work on edge deployments as well, on hybrid scenarios, air-gapped, disconnected scenarios. This is why we've been working with the Azure Local team to bring Foundry Local into Azure Local using Azure Arc. So that is another offering that is new at this Ignite. Across all of these offerings and with all the announcements at Ignite this week, Foundry Local now spans cloud to edge, and we bring AI to exactly where you need it. We will be talking about every single one of these offerings in this session, starting with Foundry Local. Foundry Local is a cross-platform stack that enables you to build local AI apps that is cross-platform and that you can run on any device configuration. At the heart of it, at the foundation of it, is Onyx Runtime. Onyx Runtime was introduced in market in 2017. It has grown organically ever since then. It is a high-performant inferencing engine that is cross-platform, that can work across multiple operating systems and device hardware. And on top of that, you see Foundry Local Management Service. And this is the service that is responsible for hosting and managing models on your local device. It is also responsible for bringing models from the Foundry catalog on the cloud at runtime. So as a developer, you don't have to package these models into your application. Your app footprint can stay very small. And then when you move up the stack, you have Foundry Local Command Line Interface and Foundry Local SDK, 2 specific ways in which you can interact with the Foundry Local stack. You would use the command line interface when you're just exploring models, when you're trying out models to see which model works for you, what is the right model with the right accuracy, with the right response time, with the right performance. And once you're comfortable with the model that you want to choose for your use case, you would use the Foundry Local SDK to integrate Foundry Local right into your application. We announced Foundry Local at Build on Windows and Mac OS. It is available as part of Microsoft Foundry on Windows. Because it's available as part of Microsoft Foundry on Windows, we are able to use the power of Windows ML to intelligently pick up the right execution provider for the user device and still be able to bring the right optimized model for the user device. As a developer, your experience with Foundry Local is exactly the same, whether you're on Windows or Mac. With Windows ML, we are able to abstract the heterogeneity of the Windows hardware. Windows is a rich and vibrant ecosystem that supports NPU, GPU, CPU, but you don't have to worry about what is the exact silicon on your user device because Windows ML abstracts it for you. We have had tremendous momentum since Build, since we introduced Foundry Local. Foundry Local is now active on 450 million plus devices, which is fantastic. We also introduced support for models, very powerful models like GPT-OSS. We expanded our support for NPUs. We now support almost every major NPU in the market. So this is all exciting momentum, but that's not all. Today, we are introducing 3 powerful things. Number 1, we're introducing Foundry Local on Android. So Foundry Local is coming to mobile devices. This expands the reach for developers across billions of devices. Number 2, we are bringing speech-to-text model support in Foundry Local, first in this class of local AI platforms to do that. And with that, now you can voice prompt your AI application, interacting with the AI app much more naturally. Number 3, we also have an improved Foundry Local SDK. We've been working with a lot of our preview customers, and we've been making the SDK even easier to use. Smaller runtime, very, very important for our customers. And also, you don't need extra installers, a lot of dependencies, so the SDK is super, super easy to use. Very excited about these three things that we're introducing. But we are also excited about the actual momentum and traction we are seeing with customers. Many customers have started integrating Foundry Local into their applications. PhonePe, who you'll hear from lately. And then you have Morgan Stanley, we have Belt, we have Anything LLM, we have partners like Dell Technologies who've integrated Foundry Local into their own applications. Very exciting momentum happening with real customers. So let's actually hear from some of them.
We are working with both wealth management customers and institutional customers who are providing trades. When a trader wants to communicate a trade, they had to be very specific. We were looking for a product, and Foundry Local actually have the privacy and security, it has the latency, and it has the cost efficiency in one product. Foundry Local has been added to a component called the Omnibox to have your thoughts translated into the actual trades.
The Raycast ecosystem is now available on Windows and is the perfect home for privacy-first local AI. Microsoft Foundry made it super easy for us to implement the first step, a platform to browse and install models, and a quick chat interface to use them, no internet required. And this is just the beginning.
Belt is our AI productivity app for corporate email, calendar, and projects, empowering you to triage your busy inbox, manage your team's workload, and stay on top of every task. Powered by Foundry Local, Belt streamlines your inbox requests so you can spend more time on what matters, your customers.
Cephalble is private, on-device AI that works on the applications you already use. It helps you control, create, and automate across everything from email, documenting, games, and even coding. Cephalble is already local. Foundry Local makes it easier to switch or update to any of Microsoft's pre-optimized models without needing to be a developer or an admin.
Hi, I'm Tyler Cox, a distinguished engineer at Dell Technologies. We're making AI more accessible. Our partnership with Windows Foundry Local blends their tools with the power of the Dell AI Factory, giving you broader access to AI models and greater choice in how you use them.
Running state-of-the-art models on your computer is at the very core of Anything LLM, where you can chat with documents and create your own AI agents. Today, I'm happy to announce that Foundry Local is our new on-device engine for Windows, where millions of users can now get access to these models instantly.
So it's great to hear from our customers there on how they're integrating Foundry Local into their applications. I'm Sam Kemp. I'm a product manager in the Foundry Local team. And we're going to have this next section on seeing Foundry Local in action. And so we're going to get started with the new improved SDK. So with the SDK, we had these 4 design principles in mind. So the one was to make it really simple. Simple for developers to deploy their AI-infused applications, and simple for end users to consume those AI-infused applications. And in the latest SDK, you just need to pull in the Foundry Local library, and you're good to go. Your end users don't need to install any dependencies like the Foundry Local CLI. All the model inference happens within your self-contained app. The other really critical thing was around making sure that the Foundry Local components are really small in size. So that creates a better application experience because your end users, they're going to get a faster download. But also, many of the app stores have size constraints when it comes to the application size. And the third principle was around making sure that it's very familiar, like cross-platform APIs, that are compliant with the OpenAI input-output format, that makes it really seamless to go from the cloud to the edge. And lastly, we wanted to go beyond chat completions. We wanted to have audio in there and tool calling too. So with this, let's get a demo going here. So I'm going to show you this SDK. I'm just going to unlock my screen first before I switch. Okay, so I have built this application, and it's a travel assistant application. So this is, you can give it queries around the destinations that you're going to, and you can do chat completions with this, and you can do also audio prompting as well. And imagine this scenario that you're using a cloud LLM to do the chat completions and whisper in the cloud. That's really great, if you've got a connection. What happens if your end users get disconnected? Like Raji said, you might be on the plane, you want to find out information. You don't want to just go 401 cannot do, right? You want to be able to enable your end users to continue using AI. So just to I'm going to give this a prompt. So at the moment in here, this is set up for chat completions. And my family's booked a holiday. They've booked a holiday to go to a place called Tresco. And you might tell from my accent, but I'm British. So there's 2 criteria for holidays if you're British. The first is there a pub at the location? And the second one is, can you get fish and chips, right? So these are the very critical things. So I'm just going to prompt this here. So is there a pub on Tresco? So this is all kind of chat completions. And, thank goodness there is a pub, so this is good. The holidays is saved. The only problem is I've got to spend 10 days with the kids, but this is, I can at least go to the pub, right, and seek refuge. So you'll see that this is the chat completions, but down in the bottom left, there's the microphone, right, and that is disabled. And again, it might be disabled because of the Wi-Fi is not working, and I want to enable it. So what I'm going to show you is how, in a few lines of code, you can enable the audio transcription. So I'm just going to close the app. I'm going to come into Visual Studio. And you can see here, there's just 2 things I need to do to get this set up. The first is I need to go and load the audio model. So the 2 key lines here is this first one. We're going to go and load the Whisper small model on the device into memory. And the second line of code is it's going to get an audio client. And one of the things that you might see there, if I just hover over, if you can really squint your eyes, that's an OpenAI audio client. So it will expect the input-output format of OpenAI. So that will make it very seamless to go from your cloud models to edge. OK, so now I've loaded the model. The next thing is to do the transcription. So here, I'm just going to uncomment here. you'll see that we have this very simple method here, like transcribed audio streaming. And what this is going to do is going to take the file, and it's going to output streamed responses. And if I just hover over that response again, just so you can see, this is an OpenAI response that's going to come back. So again, imagine if you're switching from cloud to local, you don't have to sort of switch all of your formats and do a lot of massaging to do it. You can just throw in the same input and get the same output format. So let's recompile this. So this will just take a few seconds to compile. OK, so what you're seeing here is the chat model will load just as it did before on the device. And this is all happening through Foundry Local. And the next thing you see now, the audio model is loading, and that's ready. And now it's ready. You can see the microphone button is ready. So I can now use audio prompting for this. So let's give that a try. Is there a pub on Tresco? Cool, so we've got that, and then we can just send that into the chat, and we get the good news that comes back. Okay? So there we go. So just in a few lines of code, that is how you can add in audio, like super simple. So we switch back to the slides. So the key takeaways here is that in this application, your users don't need to install anything, right? We're going to install your application, and everything is contained within it. And the Foundry Local is very small. It's only going to add 20 megabytes to your application size. And lastly, the AI features are really easy to add in, just as you saw there, like 6 lines of code. And you can switch from cloud to local seamlessly. So it's not just on Windows and Mac OS that we have Foundry Local. As Raji mentioned earlier, Foundry Local is now available on Android. And I want to call on stage Gautham from PhonePe, one of India's largest fintech platforms, to talk to you about their scenarios and how they've integrated Foundry Local into their Android app. Gautham.
Thank you, Sam, for the introduction. Hey, folks. I'm Gautham. I'm head of product for consumer platforms at PhonePe. For those of you who don't know us, think of us as Cash App, Venmo, Credit Karma, Stripe, all rolled into one, right? I will play a video that will tell you more about us and more about what we do.
PhonePe started about 10 years ago with the vision to actually solve for digital payments in India. It's a company that builds population-scale platforms to solve for access to money and access to your own funds and access to financial services across the entire length and breadth of the country. The PhonePe app basically unlocks digital payments for more than 600 million Indians today. Gen AI has definitely the potential to change a lot of how we are going to be processing transactions, how we are going to be looking at user interaction, and how we are going to be able to use technology significantly better to improve the lives of our users. What I mean by that is to make the PhonePe app and the device it runs on a self-sufficient AI engine.
The SDK allows us to leverage models on device without having to go to the server or the internet. It means they can get a lot more insights from the payments that are made out of PhonePe. For them, it means that they can look and find things easily on PhonePe. We emphasize on privacy. We know financial data is something that is very personal. It is also very critical.
The mission is to take digital payments and financial services to every Indian in the country. And I think there's no better partner than Microsoft to be able to help PhonePe achieve the same.
Right. As you can tell, that we've focused a lot on making payments really simple. And we want to do that in a way that feels personal to everyone. With this goal in mind, we partnered with Microsoft Foundry Local to explore new ideas and build new products using AI to change how people interact with payment apps. And I'm really excited to show you an actual demo of what we've been working on. Let me just switch to that. Right. So I have my Android device here, and you can see 2 apps on my phone. There's a Foundry Local app that I'll show you in a bit, and then I have PhonePe. So what you're seeing here is the PhonePe homepage with all the offerings that we have for our customers. Our customers use PhonePe in India multiple times a day for digital payments, and they have access to their transaction history with a list of things that they have spent money on, right? What we've done with Foundry Local is we've enabled a way to derive meaningful insights for our customers about their spends. Customers can come in and ask questions that are already inferred from their transactions, or they can come and type something in and get answers that are related to their transactions. I'll show you an example here, right? Just imagine, right? How many of us have felt that our expenses are creeping up slowly over a period of time, but we really don't know where the extra money is going, right? It could be going into utility payments, it could be going to something else. And with Foundry Local and the models that are distributed via Foundry Local, we are able to generate such insights. In fact, right here, I've just paid a lot more for my most recent electricity bill than I generally do. There are a bunch of other things that we can derive from the transaction data that we have on the app. For example, how much money I sent someone. The someone here is my wife, so AI can't solve for everything. But yeah, so there's rich visualization, there's a list of transactions, and there's a lot more that users can do with PhonePe. All of these insights are powered by the Foundry Local app for Android that's installed as a part of a simple setup process. I've just opened the app here. What it allows you to do is, it kind of enables you to pick standard models or custom models, fine-tune it yourself, and then use it on device for inferences that you can then leverage in your app, right? With that, I'll just get back to the presentation. Cool. So we've been pursuing, the use of Gen AI, especially in India and in our domain of fintech, and we've been working with Foundry Local for a bit. We were looking at partners who could, really solve for a bunch of different problems for us, and Foundry Local has really helped us tackle the most complex problem that we have. All of our offerings are exposed as an app, as you just saw, so we need to solve for edge deployments, right? We also operate in an industry that is highly regulated in India. There are stringent regulations on data storage, usage, and sharing. So everything that we do can't compromise on our fundamentals of data security, data privacy, and then reliability. As a partner, Foundry Local has enabled the full spectrum of AI capabilities for us. So I was mentioning earlier that we have standard models that we can use out of the box. We fine-tuned our own custom models, and we've used tools that Foundry Local provided us to do that. And we also use a lot of data layers that integrate seamlessly and operate at the scale that we operate at. Lastly, and this is really important, right? Because this is what drives success long term. We were looking for a partner that could co-innovate with us, right? Not just build solutions and ship it, but also drive our technical direction, work with us, contribute to our roadmap, as well as start experimenting with underlying technologies as they evolve, right? So with that, I'll conclude, and I'll call Raji back onto the stage.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Gautham. This was excellent. The partnership has been amazing with PhonePe the last few months, and I'm really, really glad that we were able to bring to life such an amazing offering together. With that, we have now heard 2 chapters of the Foundry Local story. We talked about Windows and Mac and how Foundry Local supports Windows and Mac. We heard about how Foundry Local now supports Android as well. There is the 3rd chapter of the story, which involves edge deployments and disconnected scenarios and air-gapped, and using Azure Local and Azure Arc and using Kubernetes as a container platform. We are able to deliver Foundry Local and local AI to edge deployments as well. To talk more about that, please welcome on stage Lior Kamrat.
Thank you, Raji. Hi, everyone. It's Thursday. I'm sure everyone are cooked at this point, but we'll try to make it fun. All right. So Raji talked about Foundry Local. She talked about the notion of how we're expanding that portfolio. So I'm here to talk to you today about our recent development when it comes to Foundry Local and Kubernetes and Azure Arc and all the edge-related deployments and patterns that we want to talk about today. So without further ado, let's just get going, and then we're going to have a live demo. I hope it will be fun, and if it fails, I can always blame DNS, you know? All right. So what is it that we're hearing and why we're actually doing this? So when we talk to customers, when we talk to them about Kubernetes, you know, the first thing that comes up is, hey, I have my own software distribution pattern. You know, don't break this. Don't touch it. This is how I like it, right? So I have my own CI/CD, my developers, my platform engineers. They used to work in a certain way. Cool, not a problem. The second thing that we know that customers that are working in a Kubernetes environment, they work in a microservices architecture. And if you think about microservices architecture, right, that's where containers comes in. That's the atomic unit when you think about Kubernetes. It's a container, right? So that's the second thing. The third thing is Kubernetes, being one of the most popular open source projects out there, has a super rich ecosystem. So we want to make sure that we're complementing that ecosystem, okay, and also providing a solution that will be able to take advantage of it. The fourth thing is bring your own model. Obviously, Foundry Local has a rich model catalog, right? You saw some examples from Sam here. You saw how PhonePe are using it, right? But what about your own model? If you have your own fine-tuned model, maybe you're doing some LoRa adapters, maybe you want to, you know, play around, okay? How do you go about and bring those models into Foundry Local, right? We'll talk about it in the demo in a second here, and have a unified one control plane to rule them all. That's where Azure Arc comes in. So what is it that we're working on? So this is a very simple architecture, okay? What we're about to do is we're about to bring Foundry Local in a containerized fashion, in a supported, verified fashion, into Kubernetes. Now, it's important to mention that it doesn't matter if your Kubernetes is connected, disconnected, air-gapped. If you're a European customer, right, sovereignty is a big thing, right? You heard about that. Maybe you went to the Azure Local session. You heard about, you know, sovereignty. Doesn't matter. This container will work in any distribution that you have because we want to support the notion of disconnected. This is what it means to run edge AI or private AI, right? And you saw those examples. So we want to complement that pattern. Cool? All right, so what is it we're going to show here today in the demo? So I'm going to walk you through a golden thread, okay? Basically, I'm going to start with Foundry Local in a container. I will have her bring my own model that I basically containerized or I brought into the container. That's going to be a Llama model, version 1, right? Nothing too fancy about that. And then I'm going to have an Arc-enabled Kubernetes. Using GitOps, I will do a rolling upgrade, and I will show you how I'm able to bring version 2 of that model. And hopefully, I will not fail doing so. Sounds good? All right. Sounds good? All right. Come on. All right. So just so you know that I'm not fluffing, right? This is a setup that is backstage, right? If you saw some of my posts, I teased that. This is a real setup. And the reason that I have this setup is to show you that, you know, when we talk about Foundry Local, we talk about physical edge AI, right? Because this is what you run at the edge, physical devices. So I want to make sure that we're complementing that story. Sounds good? So what you see here is basically a couple of consumer-grade devices. Each of these devices is running a single node Kubernetes cluster. You know, if you care, K3S cluster running on Ubuntu, right? And it has a GPU, RTX 5080, okay? Sounds good? So what is it that I'm about to show you here? So first thing first, what you see here is basically the Arc-enabled Kubernetes cluster. And you can also see that I have 4 configurations, okay? Those 4 configurations are basically assembling the GitOps configuration. Why is that important? Because what I want is I want the GitOps operator that is running on that cluster to listen to a source of truth, okay? That source of truth is a Git repository, right? I want you to pay close attention to this guy right here, right? And this is the Helm release. We're going to come back to that in a second. All right. Now, another important piece of that puzzle, right? I mentioned that we also have, basically we're bringing this as a container, right? So if you have a container, what is the second thing that you need? You need a registry, okay? Because your container needs to live somewhere. Now, the interesting piece about that one is that we're not talking about just a container here, like you're familiar with containers. So if I say a container, probably the first thing that comes to mind is Docker, right? But this is not the only thing that we're talking about. The Foundry Local piece is bundled as a container. But the model itself is basically a bunch of files. how do I bring a bunch of files, bundle those together, and basically land those in the container as part of that GitOps process, okay? In order for me to do that, I'm using Azure Container Registry, but I'm using Azure Container Registry as an OCI registry. Now, if you're not familiar with OCI, it's basically Open Container Initiatives. And what it gives you the ability to take different types of file formats and bundle those together. And then you are able to take those files in a bundled fashion and throw them wherever you want. So think of it like a tar file, right? That's the best or the easiest way to think about it. Cool. So the last thing that I want to show you, well, not the last thing, but for this part, is the Git repository, okay? So like I mentioned, this is the source of truth. The Git repository is very important because this is what holds that Helm release that I was referring to before, right? So that Helm release is actually holding the configuration that I care about. So what you see here is basically BYO, that's bring your own, right? You have the registry, that's just the address of that container registry that I just showed you. The repository, which is the path to that model, to that custom model, okay? And the version 1. So in this demo, we're gonna go from version 1 to version 2, hands off, okay? In an automated fashion. All right, so to do that, here's what we're gonna do. First of all, I'm gonna go here to VS Code, and I hope the folks at the back can see this, right? And let me just kind of show you how the environment looks like here. So this is basically the file that I just showed you in GitHub, right? And you can see here that I have version 1, okay? We're gonna touch that in a second. All right. Now, to show you kind of the existing environment or the first cluster, right? Let's go and go a bit deeper into the cluster and to what we have deployed, right? So the first thing that I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna look at the pod that I have in this namespace that I created, Foundry System. You can see that I have 2 pods. The first pod is the actual Foundry Local in a containerized fashion. And the second pod is just Open Web UI, so I can interact with the cluster, okay? All right. Second thing that I want you to see is that, and don't be alarmed by the long command. This long command is just for the purpose of this demo. But you can see at the end of this command, I have Foundry model list, okay? So basically what I'm doing is I'm executing into that pod that has the Foundry local container. Now, this model list command is the same command as you will run if you will run Foundry local, right, on a PowerShell session in Windows. There's nothing different about that. I mentioned that we're not changing the architecture. The reason that I'm showing you this command is because I want you to pay attention that I have no Llama models here because I'm about to bring my own, right? Cool. Now, again, very long command, so don't be alarmed. But what I want to show you here is that I actually have, right, that Llama model in version 1 in the cache folder of Foundry Local, right? So Foundry Local has a mechanism of caching, right? So basically, if you land a model in an Onyx fashion, in an Onyx format, inside that caching folder, right? Foundry Local will pick that up, and that model is now out for grabs, okay? Cool. So now that we have the environment, and we kind of, we set the stage, the last thing that I'm going to do here, just before kind of running through the entire thing, I'm going to watch the pods, okay? So it's not just looking at the pod, it's also watching if something is actually happening in real time. Because as you are going through a GitOps process, okay, you want to see things happening in real time. And that's where things usually, fail, but they will not fail this time, all right? All right, so let's come back to VS Code here. And I'm going to do a couple of things. Oh, by the way, one thing I forgot to mention is that if you go here to the OCI, and I'm going to, again, if you remember that path that I just showed you when I looked at the pod, this is the path that you saw. And you can see that I have only version 1 tag here, okay? So this is actually the model bundled as an OCI artifact, okay, in the container registry. So we're going to do 2 things. One, I'm going to push a new version, and then I'm going to update my code to point to that new version. And then GitOps will do its thing, right? All right. I'll come back to VS Code here, and just kind of zoom in just a bit. So the way to push to an OCI artifact is super simple. There is a tool called ORAS, right? Or ORAS represents OCI registry as storage, okay? And it's basically an open source tool from Microsoft. And the way you want to think about ORAS is like Docker. But the point with ORAS is that it's not designed to run containers. it's designed to interact with OCI artifacts. So the same way as you will do Docker push, for example, to a registry, I will now do ORAS push, okay? So this is what you see here in the, in the command, and you can see I have here ORAS push, right? And I also have the new tag of that same OCI artifact. Now again, we play pretend here for a moment and assume that I had a version 1 and I fine-tuned the model, and now I want to push version 2, okay? So this is the scenario really that we're talking about, all right? So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to push that, and this is going to take really a second. So now that image is already pushed. I'll switch back to my registry, and if I refresh, you can see now that I have version 2, okay? Now the second thing that I need to do is I actually need to change, okay, the tag to point to version 2. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and I'm going to save. And if you remember, right, so I'm going to save, and I'm just going to push, okay, that change to my Git repository. Okay, this is the Git repository, the source of truth that we talked about. Cool. So I'm going to make that change, and if you remember, we're watching the pods in the background. So I'm going to switch real quick here. So first of all, let's push that change. So now that change is now already on GitHub. And if I'll come back to my terminal, you can see that the old pod is already terminating. And the reason that this is happening is because the GitOps operator is watching the repository. And it's asking the repository, hey, has something changed? Hey, has something changed? And the moment that something changed, the operator will pick that up and initiate a new deployment on the cluster. Now, normally this takes about 5 to 10 minutes, and obviously you don't have that much time, and neither do I. So we're going to do a bit of a cooking show here, okay? But you can already see how pods are rolling, okay? The arrows, by the way, that you're seeing, just so you know that this is live. The reason that you see that arrow, because the old pod is actually capturing the GPU resource, okay? Because I just have one GPU here. So it's capturing that. So that's why you see a bit of errors, but that will fix itself, right? Now, I'm not going to wait for this entire process to finish because it takes a bit of time, right? And that's why I have another cluster, okay? And this is the second machine that I showed you. So how is that going to look like, right? Basically, after I'm doing the rollout. So I'm going to switch to that cluster, and you can see that I have, again, kind of the same setup. 2 pods, okay? Foundry Local in a containerized fashion, and I also have the Open Web UI, right? Cool. So if I'll go here to the second cluster, and I will ask for the logs again, same command that I ran before, you can see here that I actually have version 2. So I didn't touch anything, and I know that we still have a real upgrade going on, but this will be the end result. You will see version 2 running on that cluster, right? So just to show you that we're actually interacting with the cluster here and how that is actually coming to life, switch back here. And if you remember, I have Open Web UI. I mentioned this a couple of times. And we're going to interact with the cluster. We're going to have some fun with that. This is a safe space, so I'm going to ask a question. Who's here born in the 80s? Safe space, that's OK. All right, all right. So if you, like me, born in the 80s, right, I'm sure you love some good cartoon shows. I think that's very normal. What I want to show you is that this bring your own model, this model that I just rolled out, is not just a model, okay? It's a model that is also interacting with the GPU, okay? Raji mentioned, the execution provider. She mentioned, the fact that Foundry Local will do the job for you, right? Foundry Local will know where to deploy or where to run that model or which silicon to use, right? But in this case, in this case of this bring your own model, I actually programmed the model to always use the CUDA libraries, okay, that I have on those machines. So that way I know that it's always will hammer the GPU. So to do that, and because you're born in the 80s, I'm going to ask some questions here. So let's just zoom in just a bit. And I think the first question I'm going to ask is, what is the best cartoon shows? Any takers? Come on, no? All right, you're a bit shy? All right, let's see what we got. So we got He-Man, respect. G.I. Joe, not bad. Transformers, that's my favorite. And Voltron, that's all right. So I'm going to pick on that transformer thing. I'm going to continue with that. And I'll tell you why I'm doing this. So let's ask another question. Who will win a fight between Optimus Prime and Megatron? You know what? Actually, before I'm going to ask this, there's one thing that I wanted to do that I forgot. I'm going to SSH to that second machine, okay? And I'm going to run a nice tool here that's called NVI Top, okay? And NVI Top is a tool that specializes in monitoring, GPU resources or GPU utilization and all that good stuff. And you can see that right now it's flat because, I'm not running any queries. So let's go ahead and do that, okay? And I will ask a question, who will win a fight between Optimus Prime and Megatron? And I think that we all know the answer to that. There's no Megatron, right? So I'm going to ask that. And then I'm going to, maybe complement the LLM a bit because, why not? That's totally normal to complement the machine. And you can see here that I have a spike, right? Sorry, you can see here that I have a spike. So that's just going to tell you that that model is actually touching the GPU. So what is it that we did in this demo that you just saw? In this demo, what I showed you is that I started with a version 1 that is deployed, or a version 1 of a model that I brought to Foundry Local, and that Foundry Local is containerized and inside a pod in a Kubernetes cluster that is Arc enabled, that has GitOps configuration. And what I did using those GitOps configuration, I created a golden thread. I took that GitOps configuration and I used that in order to do a rolling upgrade to a new model with a new Foundry Local container in a kind of an ephemeral fashion, okay? So this just kind of show you the potential of what we talk about when we say, let's bring Foundry Local to the edge, okay? So you saw that. With that, appreciate your time. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of the week. And Raji, back to you.
That was amazing. Thank you so much. Folks, we are at the end of our session. So you saw how we enabled Foundry Local for Windows, Foundry Local for Mac, Android, and with Azure Local and Azure Arc and Kubernetes for edge deployments as well. I hope you enjoyed our conversation today. There are some calls to action. Please explore our model, super easy. I think you heard a number of times today that it's very, very easy to use Foundry Local, aka.ms/Foundry Local. Sign up for Android private preview, aka.ms/Android PRP. You can integrate Foundry Local into your app. The aka.ms/Foundry Local link has all the getting started documentation. Try Foundry Local on Kubernetes. You have the private preview sign up there as well. It was a pleasure to talk to you all today about bringing Microsoft Foundry from cloud to edge, so thank you very much.